Greetings, Night Nation, and welcome to Sons Today, a new venture from all of us here at the Sons of UCF. Sons Today will become your one-stop shop for news, notes, reaction, and opinion from various personalities across the Sons universe. You'll get different perspectives. You'll get hot takes, opinions, analysis, all here from the Sons UCF. Each episode will be at least 30-ish minutes in length and will come out a couple of times a week with rotating voices throughout the Sons universe. So nothing you need to do. Subscribe, as always, to our YouTube channel if you want to get these, and they'll pop into your podcast player as they normally do. Do not forget, though, to help patronize our sponsors, Werner, Hoffman, and Greig Garcia at wernerhoffman.com, the Cure Bowl, curebowl.com, Alumni Hall at the UCF site, floridafootballprep.com, and our good friends at Charlie Hustle, promo code TEN1215, get you 15% off your first order. And now, without further ado, here's the first episode of Sons Today. All right, friends, welcome into the debut of Sons Today, a new venture from the Sons UCF. You're going to get news, notes, analysis, perspective from various voices and different opinions and hot takes. And our first episode here today is going to recap the Iowa State UCF game. And to do so, I'm happy to welcome in the mega talented columnist from the SonsUCF.com. His name is Brian W. Peterson. You can follow him on social media at Brian W. Peterson. He's also a lover of all things gold. Brian W. Peterson, welcome into Sons Today.
Thanks, Adam. Happy to be here. I wish I was happy to say that we had a great game to talk about, but we'll get into that, I'm sure.
Yeah, let's just dive right in. Obviously, for those of you who are living under a rock, UCF loses 38-35 to Iowa State. A tough game, a game they were winning for majority of the time, Brian. And towards the end of the game, obviously, things fell apart. A couple of things we can get into, but let's just start high level. Your overall impressions, overall thoughts on the contest on Saturday between UCF and Iowa State.
Well, it was almost the Gus Malzahn special, right? It was almost that game that we kind of alluded to earlier in the week, that perhaps this would be the game that we would walk into expecting to, get our butts handed to us and we'd walk away with a victory. Came, as Gus might say, pretty darn close to happening. We did, we gave up that last touchdown at the end of the game, but I wrote down my thoughts before the game had started, and I have some keys to victory that I thought that UCF was going to have to establish in order to be competitive in this game and find a way to win it. So the first thing that I wanted to see from UCF was them to establish the pass, right? We've seen in the past that opponents of UCF's teams have just been loading the box. So we were going to see Jacurri Brown. Coach Malzahn had mentioned prior to the game that he was going to be getting the majority of the first rep snaps. So I wanted to see him establish the pass and get the passing game going so we could see RJ Harvey do what he does best. I wanted to see the defense get stops on third downs, which was something that we've struggled with in the past and unfortunately struggled with in this game as well. And I wanted to not turn the ball over. Right, we did that several times in the last few games. So consistency and not turning the ball over. I feel like we weren't able to establish the pass. We weren't able to get stops on third downs, but we didn't turn the ball over. So that's where I was coming into the game, and we'll go into the details of those.
Well, let's talk about the passing game for a second. Like it's obvious, right? If you watch the game on Saturday, obviously the rushing attack for UCF was fantastic. RJ Harvey played really well. Jacurri had a really long touchdown run, brought a different dimension that I think we've seen all season long with KJ Jefferson in there with Jacurri's speed. But the passing, I don't know how else to describe the passing game, Brian. It's just the word I wrote down is constipated. I mean, this passing game is just constipated. It's very obvious that we have no comfortability throwing the football. And I know fans and people out there want to understand, who do we blame? Like who's responsible for this? But the reality is, man, I think it's across the board. Number one, I don't think, with respect to Jacurri, I'm not going to talk about KJ anymore. KJ is not a part of our life, so I'm going to leave him out of this. Like, let's just talk about what you saw from Jacurri on Saturday. He didn't look really comfortable. I mean, shout out to our good friend Robert at 2 letters 2 words on Twitter. He was at the game in the press box and he was shooting, some videos from his vantage point, which gave you kind of the whole field, all 22 view, which obviously, we don't get Brian watching it at home on the TV. And you could see there's a couple times that, Jacurri had some crossers open, had some guys kind of breaking in open, and he made some weird decisions on some throws, right? Which means he must not still yet be comfortable with the passing attack of this offense. Clearly, Gus and Tim and Darren and how many other offensive coordinators we have also aren't comfortable with him in the passing attack, but he just didn't look comfortable at all. And he made some decisions that, you look at video and you say, hey, we probably want that one back. Second thing is his ball placement. I mean, there's a couple of shots, Brian, where the ball was just sailing on guys, wasn't really catchable. There's one that maybe Kobe doesn't need to pirouette on, but his ball placement wasn't great. But here's the third thing. And again, I know I don't want to blame just on Jacurri. And Tim Harris on Sunday night when he met the media for his press conference, he mentioned this as well. Receivers were not getting separation. Every time you saw the ball thrown downfield and you saw Javaris Johnson with an opportunity, you saw Kobe Hudson, there was a receiver glued to their hip every single solitary time. So receivers are not getting separation for whatever reason, if that's a route, if that's an individual battle they have to win. And then Jacurri was not making good decisions. So it's very obvious. Our passing game in general is just, it's constipated. We can't get out of our own way. We can't figure out a way around that. Maybe that comes with time, right? Maybe with Jacurri getting more reps and some of the receivers getting more reps, Brian. But to your point, super one-dimensional on Saturday. The passing game just looks like it's not even close to being a formidable part of this UCF offense right now.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head there. Statistically, we had 67 yards passing game the entire game. Jacurri finished the game with no touchdown passes, 2 interceptions. Just not great from a passing statistic perspective. I don't know if that's something that the coaches can work with. Like you said, if he's just going to get better with time as he gets more reps with the first team offense. I think part of the issue is we don't have any other receivers besides Kobe Hudson, right? He's kind of the go-to guy. And the rest of the receiving core seems pretty lacking in depth. Randy Pittman is an option. We went to him early. I was really happy to see us trying to get him involved in the offensive game early on. He did have a drop early on in the game, but it's funny. I was going back and I was looking through my notes as I was watching the game, and the first drive we moved the ball very well. Jacurri was throwing the ball when, he had success doing so in that first drive, that first series. And then after that, it was all downhill. And there's actually one play that still comes to mind. You'll know exactly what play I'm talking about is, I don't know if it was a bubble pass or a wheel route, but Jacurri went to throw the ball to RJ Harvey. Yep. And he had some pressure. There was a guy coming at him and he threw the ball. I don't know if he had to get rid of it earlier than he wanted to, but he had a wide open RJ Harvey. And missed him by just, a couple feet almost. And RJ was visibly upset about it, right? He knew that was a big play that had been missed. It's funny because that looked like a similar play that we saw in the Florida game where KJ Jefferson missed again, a wide open RJ Harvey with just a bad pass. So I don't know if that's something that can be fixed with coaching or time or all of the above. I've got to think that Darren Hinshaw's got to have something up his sleeve to get this quarterback game moving. He's supposed to be this, quarterback guru for us. So we'll see what he has in store moving forward.
Yeah, well, again, and we could talk about this in future episodes and whatnot, Brian. But what happens with quarterback now? Like last week, EJ Colson got the start, got a couple series, and we didn't see him again on Saturday against Iowa State. He only got one play, and I don't actually think he needed to be in for that play because Jacurri's helmet came off, and then he went to the sideline. But Iowa State called a timeout. I think that negates the helmet falling off. But either way, EJ came in for one play. We didn't see him again. Again, on the press conference on Sunday night, Tim Harris said that Jacurri took all of the first team reps and EJ took the second team reps. So where are we at with the quarterback? Are we doing this week to week? Are we flipping coins? Are we looking at us and saying, hey, you know what? Jacurri brought a wrinkle to the offense and explosiveness on the running game. But EJ maybe has a better arm, which I don't know if we know that. Like, I think we've heard that, but I don't think we've seen that, really kind of transfer live here on paper. So I don't know what we do with the quarterback game, but you're right. It's another game where there's a couple of throws that you could say, hey, I kind of want those back. And look, I'm far from the August defender, right? And as our good friends JP and Dolly tell us every week in the group chat, I'm not part of the Shiloh Christian Syndicate, but I mean, Gus had a good play call on that third down, right? It was there for RJ. RJ catches that ball, Brian, and he's probably going to get 10, 15 yards and a first down, and we're keeping the chains moving. So as much as you want to bag on Gus for some stuff, and I think a lot of that's probably accurate and appropriate, that's one you can't really blame on the guy, right? Like he had a good play call and unfortunately it just doesn't get executed. And that seems to be the theme. Like I was trying to explain this to somebody else today. The theme with UCF this year, and tell me if you think I'm off base or if this doesn't make sense. It almost feels like we're playing whack-a-mole every single week, because one week it's the offensive line. We got to get that better, right? So we're going to fix that. The next week it's the defensive, we're going to fix that. Then it's the kicking game. We're going to fix that. Then it's the quarterback play. We're going to, every week it's another thing that pops up. And it seems like UCF is just not a good enough team to overcome all of those things. Like if it's line play, if it's turnovers, if it's penalties, if it's inaccuracy, whatever it is, every week there's a new thing that pops up, and we're just playing whack-a-mole every week. And it seems like at this point in time, we don't have an ability to really solve this. And I think all that boils down to one thing, Brian, is we're not as good of a football team as I think we thought we were. I think that's clear on the field. But right now, as a 3-4 football team, now 2-3 losses in the Big 12. I mean, this season's getting out of hand in a hurry. We're just not as good as we thought we were.
No, I mean, this season is effectively over for any chance at, being considered for contention in the Big 12 at this point. We are playing for 2025 and maybe for a bowl game. And I stress the term maybe there. We're going to have to find 3 wins in our remaining schedule. And I mean, this is the second half of this season, which started yesterday, is the harder of the 2 halves. We went on the road to play at Iowa State. We've got BYU coming next week. I could make the argument BYU is actually a better team than Iowa State is. Their offense has just been putting up points galore. So we're going to struggle with them. So you mentioned the question, where do we go from here? Do you continue to play Ja'Cory Brown at quarterback, or this might be controversial, but I kind of lean towards, let's see what the young kid can do, right? Let's give EJ Colson the reins, give him the keys to the offense, and let's let him get some real-time practice, get reps with the ones, and get some game experience. He's already played a couple times. In the era of the transfer portal, you never know what's going to happen. So Ja'Cory Brown may be here next year. He may not. Maybe he's not the guy. The coaches seem to have their eye on Ja'Cory. That's probably why he got the start last week against Cincinnati. Let's see what he can do. What do we have to lose at this point?
Well, so I by taking that snap now, Brian, he's already played 2 games. So he's got 2 games left on his quote unquote red shirt. I don't know how much red shirts really mean anymore. I think at this day and age, I don't know how important that is, but obviously we've seen situations like a Mikey Keene where guys really want to preserve their red shirt. So to your point, I think we either need to fish or cut bait. Either we're going to try the approach of trying to see what we have in the quarterback position, if that's Ja'Cory or if that's EJ, and kind of make a determination. You think about the goals left in the season. I mean, a bowl game, to your point, where are the other wins in the schedule? It seems really hard right now as we see here today to find those. So if you told me at the end of the year, the goal was, hey, we found a quarterback for 2025. Again, I don't love it, but I'd be willing to sign up for saying, hey, this is not what I thought, but now we've at least maybe got a path forward. So I don't disagree with you, but I'm curious what Gus and that staff will do. And that brings me to Gus, Brian. That's the elephant in the room. There's a lot of chatter around Gus. You just go to social media and search Gus Malzahn UCF, and I'm sure you'll find a lot of fun comments here and there. Some of it justified, Brian, maybe some of it not justified. I'm not here to adjudicate all that. What I will tell you, though, is I didn't prompt you for this, so I apologize for putting you on the spot here.
Here we go.
You are a smart guy. You can figure this out. So give me one word to describe Gus Malzahn's clock management.
Poor.
I just don't even understand, Brian. So in Florida, we are down and we are literally taking every second off the play clock. We're looking at the sidelines. We're subbing guys in and out. In this game, 8 minutes to go, fourth quarter, we are up 5, and we literally take 67 or 65 seconds off the clock and punt the ball right back to Iowa State. We had an opportunity. We had a good first down, and what do? We run tempo. We snap the ball within like 10 seconds. That goes nowhere. Before you know it, like we're giving the ball back to Iowa State. I just don't understand. Like I get all the jokes and all the dementia and all the all the nursing homes JP Gilbert's looking up, Brian, but like it's hard to beat those allegations when you see this level of clock management that I don't even poor is a good word. I mean, dumbfounded is the other word. I just don't understand what we're trying to do with the clock.
And that's a great point. Trace asked Coach Malzahn in the post-game presser,
that went well too.
Yeah, that went well for you. You might have to find somebody new
I'm going to have
to get credentialed because Gus is going to have Trace taken out back. So he asked Coach Malzahn, talk about, in those last few drives where you guys were still, holding the lead and you decided to run tempo. And Coach Malzahn's response was, we were trying to score points, put the game away. And obviously that didn't happen. But yeah, just some head scratching mistakes as far as clock management goes. And it's easy for me to sit here and Monday morning quarterback this thing. Questionable clock management, to say the least. We've done this several times in the last 3 games now, where at the half, we give the ball back to the opposing offense and let them move down the field. We were able to stop Iowa State this time, but Florida 2 weeks ago in Cincinnati, if it weren't for Scott Satterfield getting in his own way, were able to move the ball down the field and get into field goal range right before the half. We did that, several games back to back now. And then at the end of the game, obviously in this Iowa State game, we have seen, again, as you alluded to, playing tempo when we should have been eating clock, feeding RJ Harvey, keeping that clock moving. And when Iowa State scores the go-ahead touchdown, they had 30 seconds left on the clock. It really makes you wonder what could have happened, how the outcome of that game could have changed had we managed the clock a little better.
Yeah, I just don't get that. And here's the problem with Gus at this point, Brian. Again, I don't know what's fair, what's not fair. I mean, obviously, if you go to, again, social media and message boards, everybody's kind of calling for Gus's head. At least, not everybody. The majority of people are calling for Gus's head. And the reality is this, though. He hasn't built up the goodwill, I think, with his fan base over the last couple of seasons, and particularly this season in general. Like, he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. And some coaches will get that benefit of the doubt. Gus is in a zero-sum game at this point. Anything he does is going to be criticized, is going to be looked at from a negative perspective. And he's not helping himself with some of his surly responses off into the media, some of the ways that he just does nonsensical coach speak. And another situation where, again, post-game, to your point, Trace asks him, hey, 3rd and 5, we took a lot of shots downfield. Like, why are we throwing 20, 25 yards on the field on 3rd and 5? And he snapped back at Trace and said, well, we're trying to win the game. What do you want us to do? And so I just think Gus is in a position where there's kind of a no-win situation here. But this is not a defense of him because he put himself in that situation, unfortunately. But so what do you do going from here, Brian? Obviously, we got BYU coming up a week from Saturday, right? So BYU will play 3:30 ESPN-ish. I think it's ESPN or ESPN2. ESPN, the big one. Great. We can get embarrassed in front of more people. ESPN 3:30, homecoming for UCF. BYU coming in undefeated. What do you do this week? Are you starting Jacurri? Are you starting EJ? Are you playing the young guys, Brian? Like, now you know where we are. We're 3-4, 3 losses in the Big 12. It's looking pretty bleak, if you will, in terms of getting into a battle for any sort of conference championship game. What do you think the mindset needs to be for UCF going forward?
Well, I think Gus is in, save the bus mode at this point. So he's going to play the quarterback he thinks gives him the best chance to win now, not necessarily for the future. If it were me, I'm probably rolling the dice and throwing EJ out there. I'd be surprised if that's the course that he takes. I'm going to imagine that he's going to continue to give Jacurri the majority of the first team reps, and he'll be our quarterback moving forward, barring any sort of injury. Maybe he goes to a 2 quarterback system, but I think that Gus is going to wind up sticking with Jacurri. He likes consistency. He's tough to get to change his mind. You might see some other younger guys out there on the defense. Henderson had a great tackle on one of the kickoffs at one point. So some of the younger guys are looking really good. We'll probably see them phased in and out throughout the games. But I think we see Ja'Cory Henderson. I think that's Gus's MO at this point.
Well, we actually haven't talked a lot about the defense, Brian, which they
Yeah.
play pretty well, right? I mean, obviously
Yeah.
you get a touchdown off of the interception from Brandon Adams, right? You should get a touchdown off the Braden Marshall interception. We don't, and we'll get to that in a few minutes here. But obviously that leads to a score on that side, right? I mean, Iowa State wasn't. I mean, on third down, I want to say they were like 6 of 19. 6 of 19 on third down. So you had some stops in there. You had a couple of pressures. Some guys got to the quarterback, but somehow it all falls apart in the end, Brian. I don't know what to make of the defense, because week in and week out, I see us against Colorado and we look how we have no idea what we're doing, right? Then we come back at Cincinnati, give up less than 20 points. You typically would take that. If I said, hey, your defense is not going to allow more than 20 points, you typically would take that. And then a game here, you get 2 takeaways, again, basically 2 scoring takeaways. You stop the team on third down a bunch, but yet we still lose the game, Brian. What this defense, I mean, yeah, I mean, it feels like it's hocus pocus every week. I have no idea what you're going to get week in and week out.
Yeah, I think the defense is getting progressively better each game. You have to consider the opponents that we've been playing, right? So this week we were playing a top 10 ranked team on the road, in front of a sold out Iowa State crowd. And the defense still came up big and made some stops and kept us in this game. I'd make the argument that without the pick sixes, and I guess one of them really wasn't a pick six, but like you said, we'll get to that. Without those plays by the defense, we probably get blown out in this game. So there does seem to be a problem getting off the field on third down. Stop me if you've heard this before, but UCF having trouble getting off the field on third down does seem to be a theme this year and always. It's not just this year, I guess, but it was a tale of two halves for the defense, because in the first half of the game, we did seem like we were getting stops on third down. And credit to Iowa State, they have a very good offense. It's very balanced. I made the observation during the game that this Iowa State team is basically the team that UCF wants to be or thinks they were going to be. Very balanced on offense. They have a very good running game, and they have a very disciplined defense. And that's something that we were tested on as far as our defense goes. In that first half, we were getting stops. Their quarterback, Becht, was very good at escaping the sack, eluding defenders. But the second half was really where the defense struggled getting them off the field on third down. And that is ultimately what cost us the game, right? We were unable to stop them on that final drive. There were some penalties involved. We can question whether or not those penalties were, legitimate penalties or not, how they affected the game. But my credit goes to the defense. They have been getting better as time has gone on, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, both those penalties, obviously it was a false start on the touchdown that probably should have been called, and I don't think that pass was catchable. But UCF doesn't. I mean, you shouldn't even be in that position, right? I mean, at that point, to let the referees decide that, shame on UCF. Rocco Becht at over 100 yards rushing, which has got to sting if you're on that UCF defensive side. Because to your point, we just had no answers for him, and it seems like he made a big play every time a big play was needed to be made. And I know this is a hot take. I don't mean this to be controversial. And here's what's really annoying about this, Brian, is Iowa State didn't look that good. I mean, for the number 9th ranked team in the nation, maybe it's an off night for them, and I haven't watched enough Iowa State to know that, but they didn't look that great. They were beatable on Saturday night, and we were in position to beat them. We were beating them. We were going to win this football game. And as always, like again, the whack-a-mole theory, things just get in the way, and it seems like UCF has no way to kind of answer that or kind of combat that. But either way, frustrating game. Again, the Knights lose 38-35 at Iowa State, number 9. And obviously we come home and play BYU. But let's grab a quick break here on Suns Today. We'll come back right after this. We'll give you some updates on some other categories from the game as well. So nobody move. Don't go anywhere. Suns Today. We'll be right back right after this. All right, Suns Today is back. Don't forget to also, give some love to our sponsors, Werner, Hoffman, and Greig, the Cure Bowl, Alumni Hall, Florida Football Prep, and Charlie Hustle. They help us make this all happen for you, so give them some love as well. Brian, something new we'll do on Suns Today. I love my categories. We're going to do another category here, but a little bit of a twist. So I recognize the word son, S-O-N-S. I guess that's sons. Has the option. Yeah, pluralized. There's more than one. I get you. Has the option to be broken down to a good acronym, Brian. So we're going to give some acronyms to the word Sons and some categories we'll hand out for the game. So the first S stands for satisfactory. This O stands for oh my God. The N stands for NGE. If you've been around UCF long, you know that stands for not good enough. That was a George O'Learyism. And the last S is for star. So satisfactory, oh my God, NGE, and star. We're going to look at this Iowa State game and tell you what happens, Brian. So I'll let you kick off. You're the first ever person to give an award for the Suns acronym. Who gets your satisfactory from the Iowa State game?
Okay, so this might be a controversial take, but I'll explain.
Great. I love controversial Brian Peterson. Again, find him on sonsucf.com for more controversy.
I'll explain where I'm coming with this, and as we go through these acronyms and you start to become more familiar with the idea, it'll make more sense. Okay, so satisfactory is the first term that we're going with here. And with satisfactory, as I was going back and looking through my notes from this game, there was a lot of highs and lows. There wasn't a whole lot of satisfactory, just getting the job done. And the one thing that comes to mind, and we can talk about this, is the punt return game. So I'm going to give my satisfactory to punt returning, who has been, or I guess has the majority of the job has been given to Trent Whittemore, the transfer from Florida. And he has been absolutely satisfactory. Nothing great, nothing special. I've taken to calling him Fair Catch Whittemore because that's all we seem to do in the punt return game. But he has also not muffed any punts or punt.
Now you're gonna. I'm gonna have to knock on wood here. Now you're gonna jinx that.
Yeah, of course. That someone will blame me for that. But that's been my satisfactory.
So what happened here? You and I both agree, right? Is Gus said, "Hey, who's the least likely to drop the football?" And they went to Whittemore and said, "You're our guy," because he's obviously not gonna. He doesn't have great game-breaking speed, which I guess you don't need as a punt returner, right? It's about angles and creases. But to your point, the likelihood of Trent Whittemore taking one to the house feels about the same amount of likelihood as you taking one to the house in a punt.
He doesn't even catch them half the time. He just lets them bounce into the end zone.
That's fair. That's also fair. Yeah, Trent Whittemore just out there, just having a good old time, getting some catches.
It is the definition of satisfactory. You can't be mad at him. He's not screwing anything up. Again, knock on wood.
But that's kind of been the staple of the Gus Malzahn era, is, you know, in special teams. We've been talking about this for years. Kick return, punt return. Those are two phases of the game that just haven't been a thing under Gus Malzahn, right? Maybe we're spoiled because we have the Joe Burnett's and the Mike Hughes, the Otis Andersons of the world who are here and who are able to kind of make a game-breaking play on special teams. We haven't had that. Xavier Townsend had some opportunities, but you don't play here no more. So nothing to worry about there. So my satisfactory, Brian, I'm going to go with Ja'Kurrie Brown's rushing ability. I think
that's a good one.
He brought a new wrinkle to the game that we haven't seen under KJ Jefferson, right? KJ had a couple of runs, but he was really just looking to run a guy over, not really make a play. Ja'Kurrie had 13 for 155 and a touchdown. And you look, obviously that a lot of that number's inflated because he had the long 67-yard touchdown run. But if you take that out, he still had 10, he had 12 for 88. That's still a nice rushing attack for a quarterback. It makes the defense have to be honest. He got some plays done with his legs on third down and got some conversions there. Maybe a couple of times he broke the pocket a little bit too early. And again, maybe that just comes to playing time. Gus had a really nice design play call at 1.2 where Ja'Kurrie kind of swung out to, I guess it would have been the field side to be able to pick up a first down. So that brings an added wrinkle, kind of a JRP-esque kind of wrinkle that we saw in last year's offense that we have not seen with KJ Jefferson. So my satisfactory, again, it wasn't perfect. I think there's some things we got to do better there, but satisfied with Ja'Kurrie Brown's rushing ability.
Yeah, I think that we have seen out of Ja'Kurrie Brown in the game and a half or so that he's played now what we were expecting to see out of KJ Jefferson, right? A little bit more mobility in the pocket, being able to shift out and keep plays alive and take off running. Certainly faster than KJ, not quite as fast as JRP was, but he was able to pick up some yards on the ground and keep the offense moving, even if he couldn't do it with his arm during the game.
All right. O stands for oh my God, Brian. What had you yelling oh my God during this game?
There's only one.
There's a lot of options, by the way. There's a lot of options available.
There are a lot of options. The one play that comes to mind for me when it comes to oh my God has to be the Braden Marshall pick six with an asterisk, because the guy drops the ball before he runs into the end zone, leaving Night Nation in an utter panic. If you're like me, watching the game unfold in real time, watching him drop this ball, For those of you that don't know, and if you don't know, you must be under a rock, Braden Marshall picks off the Iowa State offense, runs the ball back, and drops it about the half-yard line at him.
Yeah, about that.
Just drops it out of his hand as he's going in to celebrate. And the play is ultimately called off at the 1 yard line. I believe we were able to get in and score there. We got a heavy dose of RJ Harvey, and it didn't ultimately cost UCF in the long run, but just these silly mistakes. And if you weren't screaming, "Oh my God," at your TV as you watch this play unfold in real time, I don't know what play you were watching the rest of the game.
Yeah, I mean, UCF probably dodges a bullet there, right? So the ball comes to rest in the end zone. There wasn't a clear and obvious recovery, so the ball comes back out to the 1. Had that gone through the end zone, had somebody in Iowa State hopped on that thing, it's a completely different turn of events. And we've seen this for decades now, Brian. Guys dropping the ball at the 1 yard line, celebrating too early. You would think at some point this has got to get drilled out of kids. Ted Roof on Sunday night at the press conference talked about hand the ball to referee, don't put it on the ground. That's just got to get drilled out. Against your point, luckily doesn't cost us, but man, oh man, that was a what are you doing moment for sure on Saturday.
I was listening to the radio broadcast, so I was listening to Mark Daniels and Gary Parris as I'm watching the game, and Mark Daniels kept saying he thought it was going to be a touchback. So that could have really been a problem for UCF if the ball had gone into the end zone and then out of the end zone, or whatever the rule was. Mark was pretty convinced that this was going to result in a touchback and that Iowa State was going to get the ball back, which would have been just disastrous considering that we needed that pick six there in order to keep the game alive for us.
Yeah, that could have been a complete. I mean, again, this was close enough as it is. That would have really been a bit of a turn of a tide there. My oh my God, Brian, that I yelled at the TV was, "Oh my God, get new cleats." Everybody was slipping and sliding all over the field, particularly early in the game. It actually cost UCF some injuries. I think Nigel Lee Kelly ends up getting injured at some point. I don't know if that was directly from the cleats, but he took a slip. You mentioned Randy Pittman. He fell down on a route that ends up being an interception thrown by Ja'Cory Brown. I mean, no one could stay on their feet in this game. It got a little bit better in the second half, Brian, but that first half, I mean, it looked they're playing this game on ice. And again, hats off to Trace, who in the press conference continues to ask Gus some pointed questions and said, "Hey, did you not know that this was going to happen? Did you guys not test the turf out before the game?" And Gus basically was like, "Yeah, we didn't have time to." But I mean, the inability to kind of prepare for that really, I think, cost and really hurt UCF early on. Now, to be fair, Iowa State had some moments where they also were struggling with the turf, but it feels like it was really more of a shock to UCF. And I'm at my TV yelling, "Oh my God, get some new cleats, get some longer spikes, spat these things, whatever you got to do." And hopefully, I mean, Nigel Lee Kelly, we didn't get an update, and I don't know that we will from Gus, but he was shown on the sidelines walking around, not walking, I guess, moving around with crutches. So who knows how long he'll be out for, a unit that we can ill afford to lose people from, already down John Walker. But man, oh man, Brian, like figure the cleat thing out. It's not that difficult.
Yeah, they actually made comment again. Mark Daniels on the radio broadcast mentioned that this was a Kentucky bluegrass playing surface in Iowa State, and the equipment staff was making adjustments to the cleats as the game went on. So the slippage problem did become less of an issue, but I mean it was like playing on an ice rink out there when the defense seemed to be slipping all over the place. It was a head scratcher. It was tough to watch.
All right, let's go to the N, which is NGE, which again is a George O'Leary-ism for not good enough. Brian, what was not good enough for you from this game?
Besides everything,
yes, besides that,
if I had to narrow it down to one thing, we're going to go with the passing game. The offense wasn't good enough for this game, not good enough. Ja'Cory Brown finishes the night with 67 yards passing and 2 INTs. We didn't even hit 100 yards passing. You have to consider the fact that had we been able to open the passing game up and start moving the ball through the air a little bit more effectively, that perhaps the running game would have been more effective, and the game could have ended differently. You scratch your head at some of the play calls, and going back to your comments about Gus and the play calling, and ultimately it lies with him. There were several plays where Gus dialed up what seemed like a deep ball throw play on 3rd and short, 3rd and 4th. Multiple times this happened, and Ja'Cory just did not have the accuracy to make these deep ball plays. And the passing game suffered as a result of it. And you really wonder what could have happened differently had we had a better passing game, a better passing plan coming into this game.
It seems like the kryptonite for this offense, Brian, is 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, right? It's a little bit too far to run and not super maybe attainable from a running perspective. But Gus is just scared out of his mind to throw the football too. And when he decides
until
to,
he's not.
But again, when he decides to, then can we execute it? Can we block it? Can we pick up the right read? Can we get separation? Can we actually make a good throw? Like, can we actually get the ball to the receiver? And it seems like anything like 3rd, 5, 6, 7 is just purgatory for UCF because again, we'd love to run it on 3rd, 3 and in because like UCF is pretty good about running the ball, getting a first down. If that's the wild night formation, if that's Jakuri on a sweep, 3rd and 3 or less seems like it's manageable for UCF, but 3rd, 4, 5, 6, 7, it seems like it's no man's land. And Gus and that offensive staff just aren't able to dial up a play offensively, particularly in a passing attempt that's going to be consistent over time. Yeah, there's been some, but it just feels like that's a purgatory that we can't get out of. And we found ourselves in way too many of those against Iowa State. 3 for 12 on 3rd down was UCF against Iowa State, right? I'm surprised we were winning for that long. And that's really a testament to the 2 touchdowns on defense, frankly, that gave us that opportunity. But 3 of 12 on 3rd down, you're not going to win a lot of games if that's your stat line.
And to come in here to Jakuri Brown's defense for a moment, he was under pressure a lot during this game. Our offensive line is still struggling. Iowa State certainly had bigger lines on both defense and offense, and they were pushing our guys around quite a bit. So he was under pressure quite a bit and was having to get rid of the ball, I think, a little bit quicker than he wanted to, or having to throw on the run. But again, 67 yards passing is just not going to cut it.
Well, again, the reality is I don't know how much he trusts his eyes, that what he's seeing. I don't know, again, his arm placement. He's just not getting the ball in opportunities where he needs to, and receivers aren't getting separation, right? It seems like it's all coming together. But the reality is, you and I, who know very little about football other than watching it pretty much all of our lives, can see that
True.
Gus and that offense have no confidence in the passing attack. You're telling me that defensive coordinators who are paid to do this for a living don't see that too? If you and I can figure that out, I know the defensive coordinators from the teams we're playing know that and are like, go ahead, Gus, go ahead. There you 3rd and 6. Yeah, we're waiting right here for you. Like, it's not hard to figure that out.
Well, Coach Prime, several games ago, the Colorado game, he mentioned that he was going to put everybody in the box and his mama. So, I mean, defensive coordinators know how to stop this offense at this point.
I wonder what his mama's NIL deal is. But so my NG, my not good enough, Brian, is really UCF getting stops at key times. 3 for 3 Iowa State was on 4th down. So 6 of 19 on 3rd down. So again, we do a nice job, but they 3 times go for on 4th down. Every time they get it on 4th down. 2 of those 3, UCF has their hands on Rocco Beck, their quarterback, right? Deshaun Pace had one where he had him around the shoulders and he kind of moves him off. Lee Hunter, who is probably the size of you and me plus somebody else combined, is on Rocco Beck at one point and can't bring him down. 3 for 3 on 4th down. Those are backbreakers for UCF, right? And then 5 for 5 in the red zone. So when we needed to make a stop, when you had to come up with a big play, again, the 3rd downs were great, but Iowa State upped the ante and said, all right, we'll go for 4th down. All right, we'll get in the red zone. And that's where, again, we've quoted a lot of George O'Leary in this show, but he often used to say all the time, games come down to like 3 or 4 plays, right? Yep. That's really what a game comes down to. If you can win those 3 or 4 plays, 3 of 3 on 4th down, they converted 5 of 5 in the red zone. Again, that's a recipe for disaster. And especially again, those 4th downs, Brian, we had opportunities to get stops and get off the field 2 times, at least out of the 3. We don't make plays. And obviously another result is another loss for UCF.
Yeah. Converting on 3rd down is one, or allowing the team to convert on 3rd down is one thing, but giving up that many 4th down conversions on the night was just extremely aggravating to watch. So I know it has to be frustrating for the players that are on the field to let them convert. That one play with Lee Hunter, I mean, if you go back and you watch the replay, he looks as confused as the rest of us as to how Beck got out of that and didn't go down. I mean, like you said, Lee Hunter's a big guy. And he had him wrapped up, it seemed like, and he was still able to squeeze out and keep that play alive and drive the ball down the field.
Yeah, and you scratch your head and you say, what if we made one of those plays? Mm-hmm. Right? What if we make just one of those 3? We get one stop on that. Is this game any different, right? And that's where, again, it's whack-a-mole, right? Like, all right, we can get them on 3rd down. Now they go on 4th down, right? It just seems like it's going to be whack-a-mole. But all right, let's not talk all negative. Let's go some positive here. The last S in Sun stands for star. Brian, who are your star or stars of this particular game?
I'm going to go with my star being the defense of this game. The two pick sixes were major in this game for us to stick around and hold the lead like we did for the majority of the game. We talked about the issues with the cleats and the bluegrass and the slipping and the third downs. But overall, as I said earlier, I think the defense has improved game to game. I don't know if they had a better game than they have, or a better game plan, excuse me, coming into this game, or if they've just been executing better. But I think the defense gets my star for this game. It certainly isn't going to the offense. Those two pick sixes, I think, without those two plays happening, I'm afraid we get blown out in this game. The offense struggled to move the ball and to get into the end zone. So I'm going to give my star to the defense. Hopefully we see more of these younger guys on defense making these big plays. Henderson had a great tackle on one of the, I think it was a kickoff, where he just absolutely obliterated the kick returner.
I think it's you're thinking of Andrew Harris. Andrew Harris, the linebacker, blew.
I'm sorry, you're right.
You're
absolutely right. Andrew Harris, linebacker. Yeah, he made a huge tackle on one of the kickoffs. So I was really happy to see some of these younger guys getting into play on special teams and defense. But I think that the star is going to be the star for me this week is going to be the defense.
That's a good call. I mean, X-Ray Alexander played 80 plus snaps. He's typically a second string linebacker at 11 tackles, led the team. And this 3 sacks, Brian, 3 sacks for a UCF team that I think had 3 sacks just all season coming into this game. So 3 sacks in general. They did enough that you would think, hey, with some of these things, and it feels weird saying that because you give up 38 points and you go, wait a minute, 38 points. But they did enough to be able to put the team in position. They're winning 35-30, right? To your earlier point, we can ice this thing away. So the defense certainly came to play and did their part. And then fortunately towards the end, you're on the field a lot and it's bend don't break and a couple calls don't go our way. And before you know it, Iowa State's marching into the end zone. My star of the game, this is probably the easiest thing I'll do ever in my life, R.J. Harvey. Again, he's been bottled up the last couple of weeks, Brian. I think he's been frustrated. You got bottled up against Colorado and Florida, Cincinnati a little bit. Obviously with the quarterback stuff and everything kind of changing. Caden Kittler is back in this game. He'd been out the previous game, so we were shuffling the offensive line. We saw the R.J. Harvey of old, 25 carries, 203 yards, including an 80-yard touchdown run. Again, he was making big plays throughout the entire running game. The guy just refuses to go down. He's a load to carry, 2 rushing touchdowns. He would have had a great reception too, by the way, if Ja'Cory Brown could have gotten the ball out there. But again, R.J. Harvey, it sucks that, he's going to leave UCF. And this is his last year, obviously, with the Knights. And he's just kind of going out this way. And that just sucks because he's really been, I talked in a while back on the show about how I want to see some dogs in this team, some guys who want to fight, some guys who really want to stay in there. RJ Harvey is number 1 on that Mount Rushmore of dogs in this team. Guy fights for every yard. Sometimes he's going to make mistakes as he's fighting for those yards, but you take those mistakes because he cares. 200 plus yards. He did everything he could in this game. He gets my star of the game.
Yeah, I don't see how any other player could individually earn the star award, acronym, whatever you want to call it. He's just a monster. I mean, everybody knows that RJ Harvey is the man on this team. He is the one that's leading the offense. He's getting all the points for the team. Once when Braden Marshall did drop that ball before scoring on the interception, the pick 6 there, the next play, RJ Harvey saved us, right? So we get the ball back at the 1-yard line, hand it off to RJ Harvey, who just plows his way in and saves what could have been a disastrous play, turns it into points. And, we're lucky to have RJ Harvey on this team. The weapon that he is and that what he brings to this offense it speaks for itself.
I think I heard on the broadcast too that he went over the 3,000 yard mark for UCF, so that should put him in the top 2 or 3. Obviously, Kevin Smith's probably not being caught anytime soon, but kudos to RJ Harvey. But those are our categories; those are our acronyms. Again, Sons, SONS, and that is what we saw from the game, Brian. But let's grab our last break here before we get out of here on the first ever edition of Sons Today. We're gonna come back though. We're gonna finish up with closing thoughts, maybe a closing rant, maybe something that's bothering you. Who the heck knows? So stick around, everybody, for Sons Today. Again, we're brought to you by some really great folks, Werner, Hoffman, and Greig, the Cure Bowl, Alumni Hall, Florida Football Prep, and Charlie Hustle. We'll be right back right after this. All right, the third and final segment on, again, the first ever edition of Sons Today. My name's Adam. Brian Peterson is here. This is the close-up shop portion of the show, Brian, where we get to rant, maybe give a hot take, maybe a closing shot or a closing argument, maybe lawyer style, Perry Mason / JP Gilbert style here, closing arguments. Brian, I'll cede the floor to you first. What's on your mind? What's one thing that's just really grinding your gears?
Okay, so let's talk about something fun for a change. And for some of you, this might not be fun, but for me, it is fun. I love uniform talk, and UCF returns to form in this game. We finally see in the 24 season the return of the gold helmets, the new gold helmets that we debuted in our first season in the Big 12. We had seen all season long, it seems like the first 6 games of the season. We were wearing just this black and white monochrome setup that UCF has worn well, but we seem to have forgotten that we are the black and gold team. So it's nice to see UCF return with the gold lids. They looked absolutely phenomenal on the field, on TV. The gold helmet is just undefeated. And while we did not get the victory today, at least we looked good for the majority of the game. We were wearing the gold lids, the white tops, and the black pants, which just absolutely looks fantastic. It is that UCF brand that we've come to see. Might be a little unlucky. This is the same uniform combination that we wore when we went on the road to then top 10 ranked Oklahoma last year and ended up losing that game by just a few points as well. So maybe there's some stigma that we need to watch out for here, but at least we looked good on the field yesterday.
I had to check for a second if I was talking to Brian Peterson or Christian Simmons, but you are correct. That was a good looking uniform. The helmets on TV looked a little different. They were shinier. I don't know what color they really used. Maybe it was the TV, the lights there at Ames, Iowa. But it was good to see kind of UCF back in sort of a classic style look. Christian would correct you and say that there were some gold elements in previous iterations.
Oh, don't give me that.
We had the Shamu and the reverse Shamu early on in the year, but at least some gold has popped back here and there. But curious to see if UCF can start embracing that again. It seems like that has definitely gone on the wayside. So definitely appreciate the uniforms. My closing argument or closing rant, Brian, you said you were listening on the radio, correct? So you heard the Mark Daniels broadcast. Okay, so you missed out on a 3.5-hour love session between the Fox Sports announcer Spencer Tillman and Gus Malzahn.
I did hear about that.
Every time Gus was like, hey, it was third down, he's like, Gus has a play for this. You don't want to give Gus too much time. And I'm so sick, Brian. Like, here's my rant. Gus Malzahn was a great offensive mind, a mastermind of offense in 2012. Every time you think of Gus Malzahn offense, what's the next thing that comes to mind for people? Cam Newton. Cam Newton's retired from the NFL at this point.
And if you don't know that, Gus will remind you.
That's how long ago Cam Newton played. And every time we talk about Gus Malzahn's offense, we talk about that 2013 or that 2010 offense, right? That was decades ago. The college landscape has evolved. Offenses are evolved. And it's so frustrating when you see lazy announcers who just go, oh, Gus is a great coach and he's been around a long time. Yeah, he has been around a long time. Yes, he has won some games, but look at where he's producing now as an offense. Look at his offense relative to others. And here's the thing, like, I don't mean to sound negative when I say this, but Gus is kind of a stat compiler. His teams put up yards, they put up points, but in terms of a flow of a system, it's just not always there. And every time I hear announcers talk about the Gus Malzahn of old, the offensive genius, Cam Newton, that was 12, 13 years ago at this point. At some point in time, we have to move past that and talk about the Gus offense that we saw when we beat him in the Peach Bowl and the few years after that. And he didn't get fired at Auburn because people were bored. He got fired at Auburn because Auburn was not producing offensively. It had challenges. There's that ESPN article that's out there. I think Trace Trelko tweeted it on social media at SignPez.
Scary. I know exactly what article you're talking about.
Written from like 4 years ago, talking about the downfall of Gus at Auburn. And it's literally, Brian, a carbon copy of what we're experiencing now. Even some of the same names and, and GJ Kinney's and Chip Lindsey's and Rhett Lashley's and Kenny Dillingham's, the same names we're hearing and dealing with today are the same things that are true. So while I'm all for giving Gus his flowers for having a really good offense back in 2010, 2012, the calendar, my friend, has flipped numerous times since then. And I think it's about time that some people in the media, some people who analyze football, look at this current Gus Malzahn system and stop patting him on the back and saying he's got all this great offensive firepower, but rather look at what he's doing now on the field, and let's stop giving him credit for what he did 12 years ago.
It's funny, to your point. I think so. UCF is now on a 4-game losing streak. We find ourselves back here again, similar to what we saw in the 2023 season. Hopefully it doesn't extend to a 5th game, but we'll cross that bridge next week when BYU comes to town. But so on this 4-game losing streak, to your point, as you mentioned, that Gus is very good about putting up stats. This is the first game, I believe, of the 4-game losing streak where UCF was actually outgained in offense, yet we have still managed to lose every game in this 4-game lose streak. So the 3 games prior to this, we outgained our opponent, yet we still lost. So to your point, Gus still putting up lots of statistics, but not statistically winning in the one category where it matters, which is winning.
Yeah, again, his system puts up yards and points. We've seen that, right? But if the execution isn't great and the inability to maybe move off of something and go to something else, another huge, great follow on social media is our friend Andy at UCF XOS, who does a lot of breakdown videos. He's got some great stuff on his YouTube channel, and he shows like, hey, we had a flat route here. Hey, why aren't we kind of getting the quarterback a little bit out of the pocket on a boot? There are some things that you could do evolutionary that can maybe make it easier for quarterbacks. Maybe some things defenses are giving us, but it feels like Gus. Kenny Dillingham said it perfectly at Big 12 Media Day. Gus is gonna take a square peg and just jam it into a round hole until it fits, and he's not going to stop. He's going to be convicted in doing that. And while I can applaud the consistency, at some point there's also some neuroses that has to be considered there.
The Auburn fans, they tried to warn us when we first hired Gus. They said, you're going to hear a lot of booms, and then you're going to be really frustrated with the way that he does things, right? He's stuck in his way. He does things a certain way, and you're not going to change what he does. And that's what we've seen out of Gus these last few seasons is he's going to stick to his guns, and he's going to do things the way he wants to do, whether they're working or not. I'll bring you back to those 3rd down pass plays that we talked about earlier. They weren't working, yet he continued to try to run the same play over and over again with no success. What are you going to do?
We're not going to do much, but friends, that is Brian W. Peterson, and find his work on the sonsucf.com website there. He's got articles out typically every week. Brian's pretty consistent. So each week you'll find something new on sonsucf.com from Brian Peterson. Again, follow along everything in the Suns universe on YouTube at Sons of UCF. This video and many more are available for you there as well. On the audio feeds, you can get this show and many others available there as well too. So keep following along. Much, much appreciated. Brian, thanks for hopping in and joining me this evening on Suns Today, although Suns Today this evening sounds weird. We'll figure that out. But thanks for hopping in and recapping the game. And everybody, we will talk to you all soon. So go Knights.
Charge on.